in my conversations with many of you, some of the following points were raised. One is that, I mean, business has just been totally closed for the past 2 months, or it's been severely depressed, and inflows have dried up. Financial commitments are being met through savings, which are also depleting fast. And many of us are really worried about whether we will survive this crisis, whether our businesses will continue. And as and when business resumes, will our customers come back and how much will they spend? So these are all very real and pressing concerns. So in this workshop, I've tried to put together 3 modules, and I've shared some worksheets with all of you. So hopefully I could get you guys to also share your perspectives. And the workshop is to help us as a group, hopefully get an understanding of the problems we are facing and how to overcome them. I'm really lucky that in the group we have a wide range of people. We have people who are setting up platforms for children. We have people who are working in, premium apparel. We have people in sustainable living, and we have like a large number of people in diverse environments. So I'm hoping that in today's session, we can discuss, we can share our points of view, and also hopefully arrive at some action plan. So if you have any questions, do raise your hand or send a message or whatever. But in the middle, I'm just going to start presenting. I hope that's okay with you now, Ayushri.
Yes, Rini, sounds perfect. Yeah.
All right then. So here goes. Ladies, can you see?
Yes, Rini. It's
okay. So what are we going to discuss today? And we have like an hour and a half, so I would like to keep it interactive. So that's why I've shared the worksheets. I hope you all have the worksheets. You don't really need them, but they're there just so that, otherwise webinars sometimes are a real waste of time because you leave and there's nothing that you can do subsequently. So really, what are we discussing today? So we have 3 clear-cut flows. The first one is on acceptance. The next one is on analysis, and the last is on action planning. I tend to follow a very structured approach because I find that when you're working in a period of fluidity or when there's a lot of uncertainty, it helps to take decisions based on facts. Now, honestly, none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow or day after. I mean, whether COVID is there or not, we'll never know. But I've always found that in business or in personal life, as long as you take the decision on the best known facts available to you, you're doing a good job. So the first step is I would like to discuss what are the latest facts and the data which has emerged about the Indian consumer in a COVID situation. So please understand that the trends that I'm going to share with you are for India as a whole, and therefore you may want to tailor it for your own business or any other discussions in those sense. So the first step really is on acceptance. Now, when I say acceptance, what I mean is that post-lockdown, consumers expect a reduction in income and expenses. This is widespread, which many of us already know. But at the same time, COVID-19 has led to the adoption of new brands, new channels, and behaviors which are likely to remain. So as and when business does resume, it may not be the same as it was before. So what I'd like to do is help all of us as a group get a grip of what will be the new normal for us in our business and how can we adapt. So here I would like you to keep in mind the business that you are really looking at to grow back in, and keep the facts and the data which I will share in mind, and look at how your consumer are likely to change. So when you are in a fluid situation, I mean, we do a lot of scenario planning. When I do a lot of work with new brands which want to enter new markets, large companies, Indian companies. So whenever we want to enter a new market or when there's a fluid situation, there's some factors that we consider. So what are the factors? The first one is consumer sentiment. So this data which I'm sharing with you is from the McKinsey Quarterly. They come out with a almost a weekly survey, and it talks about India as a whole. The data will be updated once again by next week. So what does it say? The number one thing in any country is, just hold on, I'll shut my balcony door. Okay, I'm back now. So in this brief time, I hope you guys actually got to see the screen. It basically says that optimism, which is confidence in your own country's economic recovery, Indians remain optimistic. Now, this is a sentiment, and as you've seen, starting from the beginning, say the end of March till now, the overall sentiment of optimism remains. Optimism is the feeling that the economy will rebound and grow within 2 to 3 months. And that's really important because most people buy things not just based on functional parameters, but also how they feel. So the most important thing for us to remember is sentiment remains positive. If you look at this study, there are many places where sentiment is not positive. Places like UK, certain pockets in the US, they are all in extremely negative state. And one of that is also because of the devastation that COVID-19 has caused in terms of lives. So that's the first to remember that overall the sentiment is still positive, irrespective of your category. But at the same time, a large number of consumers are experiencing a decline in income. Now, what's really happening is that most people believe that their income is likely to drop a bit. If you see that 54% of people actually think their income is going to go down. And as a result, what many people have done is they have actually reduced their spends and are going to increase their savings. So it would be fair to say that for most of us, our target audience will actually reduce the spends and try to increase the savings. And the next is how long. Now, this is really important. Most of us are operating on savings or on funds or on, on hope. So we all need to know how long will a sentiment hold on, or how long will this economic depression, at least people think it will survive. Now, as you see it, most people think it's going to be more than 2 months. That means really people think that it's almost 3 to 4 months before there will be a change or any positive change in their financial situation. Now, why am I sharing this? Because if we're going to plan for the future, then we also need to know how long will this period of uncertainty exist. So if it was just a month or so, we could safely say by October, November, things would bounce back. But it's unlikely. So the reason why I'm sharing this data with you is so that we know how long we have to manage in a fluid situation, and therefore do we need to take action, or can we just afford not to take action? And to be very honest, if the next 4 to 6 months is going to be fluid, people not spending too much of money and thinking about their expenses, clearly we need to learn to behave differently in the new normal. So what is it that people are going to decrease spends on? So if you see it, pretty much everything other than groceries. So essentials hold, and there's going to be a decline in discretionary spends. Now, why is that important? Very few of the people in this workshop are working on stuff which is, essential. All of us work usually in luxury or discretionary spends. So when people don't have money to spend on discretionary stuff, then competition is tough because we are actually fighting for a share of a depressed wallet. And in this situation, the role of branding and communication becomes very important because people must be aware of what we are saying and people must think that it's relevant and therefore they must want to buy us. So therefore, in a depressed environment, when people don't spend too much money, the role of your brand and your customer outreach becomes even more important. And now some of the interesting data which have come up, and many of you have already, in fact, integrated it in your products. If you see, there are 4 quadrants here, and the only thing which we must really look at is where people talk of accelerated shifts, which means what's happened thanks to COVID-19 and is likely to stay. So remote learning, self-learning remotely, if you're in the business of providing knowledge and learning, then self-learning can be done big time through remote, and that's likely to continue. Wellness through apps, yeah, why not? Online fitness as well, digital workouts, and remote learning for children. So these are all things which are actually growing in a COVID-like situation and likely to continue. In other words, you can also look below and say potentially here to stay. Digital payments, store side pickup, grocery delivery, and restaurant food delivery. Stuff which were pretty much already there, including online streaming. So If you don't have these things in your business, or if your business can move to these platforms, then you should include them, because these are trends, these are consumer threshold behavior, which is likely to remain in a post-COVID world. So that brings me to the end of the first session, which is visualizing the new normal. Now, when I ask you about how do you visualize the new normal, I'm going to ask you, I hope all of you have a copy of my worksheet. Does anybody not have it? I can't see anything, so. Do all the ladies have the worksheets which I've sent?
Can you please confirm, everyone? It's
Because
there
I'd
on
like-
your email. Can you please check your email? It was sent on your email.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in case you don't have it, we can still, if you have it, that's great. But if you don't have it,
Yeah,
I'll wait for a few minutes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we'll just wait for 3 minutes for all of them to maybe
Yes,
open
please.
it up. Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is, while we are waiting for this, I'm just going to tell you what is it that I would like you guys to do. I'd like two of the participants to maybe be my guinea pigs and present some of your thoughts in the first part, which is ask yourself some of these questions. I've just shared with you certain facts about how people look at their business, how people are going to look at their life in a post-COVID situation. So what I'm asking you guys to do is to make sense of a COVID situation, can we do something very simple, which is answer 3 questions. How will COVID impact the earning capacity and the spending capacity of my target audience? Why is this so important? Because if COVID doesn't allow my target audience to earn and therefore to spend, then their chances of them spending on my business are going to come down. And how long will this last for? So if you find that your customers are likely to have a situation where they don't have funds for 4 to 6 months, then that's the kind of time frame in which we will have to make sure our business runs without any inflow. And many people I do know when I work with them say, I don't have that kind of money. In which case, either you're going to get that money from somewhere or you'll actually be looking at how do you close down your business. Because how long is this lack of income going to last is a very important question, because survival depends on inflows, savings, and funds as per the time available to us. So the first step in acceptance of this situation is to understand how is COVID impacting the earning and spending capacity of my target audience, and how long will they not spend? That's the first one. If you are lucky, then it's unlikely to affect your business. Then it's just a case of wait and watch. But if you find that your target audiences are not spending, then we move to the next question, which is how is my category being impacted by changes in consumer attitudes and behavior? And will this lockdown behavior continue? Because there are many people who feel that, I run a food business, and once my restaurant opens again, people will just flock and come back. So I just need to somehow weather it out for the next 3 or 4 months, which is fine. If that's your belief, that's perfectly okay. And then there are other people who are like, I don't think people are going to come back to my restaurant business. And if they do, it's going to be severely depressed. And I don't think I'll have the wherewithal to continue. So do I need to launch a new service? Do I need to invest in a new business? Do I need to invest more in roadside pickup and delivery? So the second question is, if you think that your business is likely to get affected, how do you need to pivot? How do you need to change? Do you need to launch new products or services? Or do you need to change the way you talk about your brand? Because if you have to survive, you have to be relevant. So the second question to ask yourself is, how is my category being impacted by COVID, and how do I need to change? And the last point that I have to ask is, how can my offering be relevant and accessible in a post-COVID world? Because people are buying things increasingly digital. For those of us who don't have an online presence, customers, even if they want your brand, can't buy it. So that's really the basic issues which are going to come up. How is my offering accessible in a post-COVID world? And secondly, as consumers increasingly restrict their mobility, how do I exist in a situation like that and engage new users and existing users? So lastly is planning for the new normal. So at this stage, I'd like to take a short break, and I will suggest if you could take some time out and work on, your worksheets. And I'd like 2 volunteers. We take about 5 minutes off, and maybe we could talk about it, about how you feel. How do you think COVID's affecting your business? Do I have any volunteers for this, or I'll have to randomly pick up 2 names? Malini?
Malini, can you try doing that again? Because we can't do the unmuting option has to be from your end. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes. You're visible.
Okay. So Rini, do you want me to go over that questionnaire and answer it?
Yeah, or you could just you could give us a bit of understanding about your business and the category, and how do you think COVID is affecting you? How long? So the 3 questions. So the idea is later on the participants can actually look at their business and answer these questions. So I've also shared the screen if it's of any use to you, which is how will COVID impact the earning? And so what's your category? How do you think COVID is impacting the earning and spending capacity? And how long do you think it will last? And do you need to pivot to meet the requirements?
Sure. So I run a company called Stone Soup, and we work in the area of sustainability. Most of the products that we sell are products which are great for the environment, great for people's skins, but they're available at few and far off places, right? They're not so easily available in your neighborhood grocery stores. So we have seen a demand go down. Amazon has been shut. Amazon was a source from where almost 15 to 20% of our sales were coming. We did see sales from our own websites come through some bit, but we've seen a big impact. When we look at people, it's about Maslow's theory of hierarchy. I think caring for the environment is fairly high up. And we've seen even people, including us as volunteers, who won't touch a plastic water bottle. We're going and distributing water bottles. So environment has currently taken a second, back seat. But I feel it will come back.
Okay.
It's just a matter of time. It's about waiting out COVID, and some of the products that we sell, they cost less in long term. So people would want to compose so they can still buy greens, which are safe. People would want to use reusable cloth pads and cups because they can't go out and buy every month. So yeah, I'm hopeful.
So do you think that
sales are gone?
So one question is, do you think you need to pivot anything? Do you think COVID is making, because one of the participants told me that, I think that was Ritika, who said that when people have limited income, they don't really spend on sustainable living because, they are actually focusing on buying more of what they have, discretionary spends come down. So do you need to change something in your value proposition to sustain, or do you think you will just hold on until, things recover?
So we have already pivoted. We had a lot of women who were making cloth pads for us. They've started making cloth masks. So that's a demand that's gone through the roof. And because of which we're able to sustain our network, we're able to get everyone to take something home.
Right.
Okay. That's something that's growing. So hopefully, when we already have grown to 6 states and around network of 400 tailors.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay. So would it be correct to say that basis COVID, you think your categories are impacted, and therefore you have actually already launched offerings which there is a need for in the market, and that's helped you? Because
Yes.
that would really
True.
benefit a lot of people. Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe one of the big things for us to take out from your example is within 2 months itself, you were very agile and you pivoted. You didn't move away from your core offering, which is sustainable living, but you launched cloth masks.
Yes.
So maybe women were not ready to buy more expensive products at that point in time, but they were definitely ready to buy masks and save themselves. So I think one of the biggest learnings from your example has been to pivot to sustain your business. Is that correct?
True. I mean, you put it so much better.
So, okay. Anything else, or shall I move on?
Yeah.
Would you like to add anything else? Okay. Anybody else would like to share their views now, or do I later on get somebody else to answer any questions? Anybody else at the moment? Okay. So then I'll just move on. Thank you, Malini. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll just move on to the next. And okay, where is my view? Is it no? Hold on. So as we move on, I would really like to keep asking more participants to share their points of view, because otherwise, it'll be really boring for all of us. And if you have any questions at this point of view, please share it with me. So one of the biggest learnings has been, just by talking to one of our participants today, we've seen that COVID is impacting our earning and spending capacity. In the case of Malini and Stone Soup, as she's already talked of how women were not buying the products, accessibility and Amazon delivery, they were all a problem and likely to remain for a while. Category was not selling as much. So she then launched something which was very relevant using her existing resources so that actually she could tide over a difficult time. So this would be a classic case perhaps, and many of you are already doing it, where you've taken cognizant of the fact that consumer behavior is changing, and some of you have launched new products or are just waiting to launch new products. And now that is also very important, because the most important thing for us is really acceptance based on data. And by this, I mean, COVID-19 is changing the way we live. And no one can predict the future, but we can all take decisions based on emerging trends and our current status. So nothing that we do is really right or wrong, but whatever we do, as long as we do something to keep moving, we'll definitely be able to overcome this difficult time. This was the worksheet that's already shared with you. I have shared it in the PDF document. So the idea is, if you feel that you need a structure by which you can review, the way you are handling the COVID situation, the first thing to do is try and visualize the situation and the situation your consumer is in, because ultimately brands have to meet the requirements of their consumers. So we would request you, as and when required, post the workshop, you could actually use this worksheet to get a good understanding of consumer sentiment, consumer income perception, and buying patterns. All these three things will help you understand what are the functional changes you need to make in your business, and finally, consumer perception. Any questions at this point in time? Or shall I just move into my next session, which is the example that I'm sharing? Okay, so since I'm not hearing anything, I'm just going ahead. So the next part is, so this is a classic example which I'm sharing with you of a summary, very similar to what Malini said, but quite different category. So one of our clients is a women's wear client, and in her opinion, consumer sentiment is negative. So this is verbatim as she described her business, that consumer sentiment is negative because customers are working women and they expect their income to decline. And so they are likely to limit on non-essentials like clothing. Their ticket size was lower and more selective. They also were present only in brick and mortar and events with very limited presence online. So therefore, the first thing they're going to do is they're investing in a great website. They're also going to boost their presence on Instagram, plus have a lot of focus on digital sales. Next, some of them even actually spoke of how they wish to close down their stores because they felt that they wouldn't have the funds to keep all the stores going, and actually go and ask the staff to take pay cuts. To be honest, while they are very upbeat, young, and dynamic, they're also worried because they know their funds will last only for 5 months. And after that, they'll have to either go for another round of fundraising or they'll have to take some really tough calls. Now, as a result, what they're actually talking about is what I asked you all to think of, which is the key challenge, which is how do you make your brand relevant? In the case of a working women clothing brand, if women aren't going to work or they're not, wearing work from home wear, then their brand does not really have a reason to exist. So therefore, they are even contemplating launching a work from home range, or how do we stand out from other online brands? Now, these are all challenges which happen when a situation has arisen, and you may find that your core offering is not as relevant as it was before. So that's the summary of the first part, which is on brand acceptance. Do we have any questions at this stage, or shall I move? Like I said, my presentation is actually divided into 3 sections, and I don't know why Malini's screen keeps coming up, but at this stage, if there are no further questions, I'll move on. Like I said, my presentation is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 was on understanding the world as it is today. The second one is going to be on action planning. And in advance, I think I shall pick up 2 names, like Ritika and maybe, who else could I ask? Maybe Ritika and Sindhuja. Maybe I could request you guys to participate in the next questions. Would that be okay? So let me just move into the next section. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going into the next section, which is on analysis. For analysis, hold on. So once you've understood where your brand is, the next question actually becomes analysis of your brand's dynamics. So how are people becoming aware of my offering? Is it relevant to people? Is it meaningful? How is my offering compared to the competition? And finally, engagement. Now, why are all these things really important? They're important because in a post-COVID situation, people are changing the way they look at brands, how they engage with brands, and what brands means to them. And so therefore, let's just spend a bit of time on analysis. Brands have functional and emotional benefits. In the worksheets that I shared with you, I gave an example of what are functional and emotional benefits, how to work with them. So basically, brands offer both rational and subliminal needs of the consumers, and they have to meet them. Otherwise, they won't be bought whether COVID-19 exists or not. So the most important thing is to make sure that your functional and emotional benefits meet that of your customers. So first step, which I want to talk to you guys about, is on awareness of the brand proposition. As we all know, consumers are increasingly engaging online, speaking to friends via video, searching for content on social feeds, checking for reviews, offers online, buying digital wallets, and much more. Now, it's really important to understand, are we reaching out to them in a way that they want? Why am I saying this? So I've given a case study of a client of ours, and these are the words which they use. They run a very specialized, high-profile crockery business. So they work out of a studio workshop and have a few retail partners. Most of their business comes from exhibitions with people walking into our store and word of mouth. They also sell online via their own website and some partner sites. Now the retail is closed, supply channel is broken, staff underutilized. So the key question is, how do I get new customers? I need to get back to work soon, but I don't have much of a budget. Now this is a classic case where the brand has to work on creating awareness, because as you can see, the brand has predominantly a brick and mortar presence or through some partner sites, people walking into their stores and word of mouth. With restricted movements, these avenues of creating brand awareness don't exist. So the big challenge here would be on how to create brand awareness. Now, it's also important to understand that many entrepreneurs, especially early stage entrepreneurs, create brand awareness through events, one-on-one interaction, or through brick and mortar presence in high traffic locations. As consumers shift online, consuming very attractively designed and engaging content, digital becomes the new normal for brand awareness. So I've just shared some data, which is on social distancing and how it's affected the way media consumes. Why am I sharing this? Because I've seen a lot of the brands in early stage, they don't really spend much on creating content or on realizing how important the content which they've created is. As people stay at home, and once you stay at home, you change your media habits. Social distancing and working from home and quarantine has led to a significant increase in the amount of time we spend on social media and what we use social media for. So if your brand does not have a strong social media presence, now is the time to take a good look at it and come back. Next, I'll spend a few minutes on how social media actually affects consumer decision journey and why digital is important. In my communication with most of you, I've found that not everybody had a strong digital or online presence. So why is that important? Very simple. The first step is in your initial consideration set. When you have a brand and you don't know anything about it, then you're not going to buy it. But if you see a picture about a brand on Instagram, or if you read a tweet, or when you're searching for content, a brand comes up, sometimes you Google a problem and a brand solution comes up, or through paid adverts. These are all ways and means by which people understand and come to know about your brand, and it enters the consideration set. So therefore, what's very important is in a post-COVID world, you really need to make sure that you have a digital campaign or a digital presence which helps people get to know about your brand. The next section which I'd like to talk to you about is active evaluation, which is people may know about your brand, but do they choose you or not choose you over competition? Well, yes, increasingly people choose brands based on reviews online. Sometimes they buy brands when they see their friends using a particular brand, or sometimes they stumble upon a website, and that's how the brand enters the consideration set. So therefore, once again, especially in a post-COVID situation where you don't spend so much time outside your home, the role of digital is extremely important. And last, the moment of purchase. Most of us know that digital purchase is really easy and we end up spending far more than we actually want to. But in addition, when you have restricted movements, or you don't want to go to a mall, or you don't wish to go to a crowded supermarket, online sale option is really important. You need to evaluate your fulfillment options. I've been seeing a lot of messages talking about how brands are not able to deliver to the end consumer because there are no delivery boys, and refunds. So these are all elements which are all linked to moving from a face-to-face brick and mortar sale to a moment of purchase, which is predominantly digital. And last but not the least, something that didn't exist before social media. I mean, social media has been around only for 15 years. Before that, if anybody said anything to you, it was word of mouth. But today, that's not the case. Often people post things about brands, their positive or negative experience. In the olden days, it was very easy. If a customer was unhappy, they just go away. But today, if the customer is unhappy, they'll trash you online and they'll tell everybody not to buy this brand. So therefore, not only is it important for you to have a social presence, but you also need to monitor the social presence. You need to make sure you understand what people are saying about your brand, how they post about you, and if necessary, you can also look at paid recommendations, because recommendations are something which people are increasingly looking at. So kind of endorsement, but it doesn't have to be by a celebrity. It can just be by another consumer. So in summation, what we are looking at are the 4 factors for digital hygiene. What we call digital hygiene is when a new brand is launched, or when a brand wants to exist in a mix of online and offline situation, they need to have like 4 basic things. Many of you have said that you don't have much budgets and that you don't know how you're going to come online and start selling in a digital world. Well, the truth of it is there are these 4 things which are absolutely critical. The first is a social presence for discovery and engagement, which is people often discover other brands through social media. Search engine optimization for content-led discovery. Next comes a website with a very clear-cut value proposition. And website also in today's day and age builds credibility and closure, especially if you don't have a brick and mortar presence. And lastly, all these 3 things are pointless unless you have a marketing calendar. We usually have an events calendar. We also know where we're going to do activities and meet people. But we very rarely have a digital marketing activity calendar. So when we refer to an activity calendar in this section, it means what am I going to do on my social media? How am I going to keep optimizing my content? And how am I going to upgrade my website and ensure that it is very credible and it leads to increasing sales? So that's the first step which we need to look at when it comes to. So I'm just going to go back to my screen and ask, are there any questions at this stage? I don't think there are still no questions at this stage. All right. So I'm going to the next one then. So I've included a case study, and the case study is of a smaller brand called My Little Moped. I don't know whether any of you have heard of this brand. But My Little Moppet is a very interesting brand launched by a doctor, a pediatrician. She's based in Madurai, and she sells children's food. Her brand sells 100% organic food, and her USP is written bang up, which is homemade by Dr. Mom, organic, chemical free, and made fresh for every order. So when she started about 5 or 6 years ago, it was very simple. It was organic, freshly made food, which she sold via events and through face-to-face meets and through her store. That's the image on the left. And today she is a large brand which has a strong digital presence. She's organic, freshly made food which is available across India. How has she achieved this in such a short period of time? And please remember, it's not a really large company. It's a lady and her husband, both doctors, and their small team who work pretty much from home to make sure that this brand reaches a maximum number of women through content. On the left side, you would see her blog. So she has a lovely blog called My Little Moppet, where she talks a lot about food, diet, weight gain, and other problems which women and children are often grappling with. And they are written in an easy to understand way. She's used her doctor credentials, and she shares a lot of information. So many people stumble upon My Little Moppet when they're actually looking for a solution to a feeding problem. Next, she has a lot of great content online in YouTube, a lot of, again, recipes. She has a mix of recipes which you can make from scratch and recipes which you can make using her products. And if you look at the bottom, there are lots of video testimonials from happy customers. And these video testimonials look very genuine. They don't look like these are paid models and actors. They look like people actually are raving about your products, how great they are, and they're very authentic. So the more authentic testimonial, the bigger the chance that I will buy the product. And if you see on the right, there are lots of reviews. So it's like you just Google it and you find like tons of reviews which talk amazing things about this brand. And finally, a very active social presence on Facebook. So if you can see in a short period of time, they move from being a small mom and pop shop selling through events and actually moved entirely online. And today she is present big time in the South. In fact, a couple of years ago, she had even started distribution in brick and mortar in Bombay. And she wants to keep it limited because she doesn't add any preservatives to her food. So her shelf life is limited. And therefore, she really can't go down the traditional brick and mortar route. And that's a decision which she's taken. But if you look at it, this is a thriving company, very profitable, doing very well, carving out a niche for themselves in a highly competitive baby food category and doing really well. And how? Entirely through content, by being available online and by doing the 3 things which we'd asked for, which is, going back, she has great social media presence for discovery and engagement. She has an amazing blog, which is really well optimized for search and has high quality content, which leads to a lot of organic discovery. She has an amazing website which talks about how she's a doctor mom, her products are fresh and organic, and they're really good for mom and baby. There's a lot of credibility with the kind of things which she posts, and closure because the products are always available, they are freshly made, and they are attractively packaged. All this is done because she spends a fair amount of her time by making sure that people are able to discover her products online, engage with her and her team, and buy the product. So that's one of the most important things to remember as we move into a world post-COVID, that digital hygiene becomes critical. For those who don't have a great website, or those who haven't really spent on SEO, or those who don't have any time for social presence, those are habits which you'll need to change because that's how the consumer is changing. I'm moving into the second part. So the first part was on how are people going to get aware about your brand. The second part is on brand relevance. At the end of this section, I'm going to come back to Ritika, and I'm going to ask her whether she could tell us a bit about how she's going to create brand awareness and relevance, because she has a really cool brand offering. So before that, I just want to continue with the relevance section. I hope that's okay with you, Ritika. So in terms of relevance, what we mean is, how does your brand meet the functional needs of customers? Can they afford it? How does it make them feel? Many of you have actually talked about not many people buy my brand even before COVID, or that I'm not sure how to get new customers. So that the question which we're actually asking is it relevant? So I've shared a case study here, which is on kids food delivery, which is a client of ours which provides kid meal service. It's a institutional company. They provide kids food, great customers, good team, and they've been around for some time. They even have a very nice digital media agency, not really able to grow beyond a certain level. So his perpetual question is, how can I get more customers? I need to get back to work, especially with COVID. There's my kitchen's shut, the schools are shut. I don't have much budget. How do I continue? Because I really don't want to close down my factory. So the question here is really a classic case for relevance. There are lots of women who would be like, no problem in ordering kids' food. Canteen service, kids' food, home delivery. And so there would be a percentage of women who find that they're fine with this brand. And at the same time, there'll be a percentage of women who would never buy kids' food delivered home because they would believe that that's not good for their children. Now, both assumptions are right or wrong, but I've chosen this example to show how a brand needs to be relevant to a large number of people. So if a brand is relevant to a niche category, then the brand will do well, but the number of people who will buy the brand will be a smaller number. So the brand either needs to sell a lot to them or at a very high price, or the brand will remain a niche brand. It may be very profitable, but it won't be a mass and a very big brand. And that's why the example of kids' food delivery, a very polarizing thing, because some moms are like totally cool with kids' food being delivered home, and some moms are like totally anti it. So what I'd like you to remember whenever you think of relevance is, does the category work for a large number of people? If the category is not accepted by a large number of people, then perhaps the business won't grow as much as you want it to grow. And why am I talking about this? Because almost everybody in the CWE group, all the entrepreneurs here have great products and services, but I find that quite a few of them don't have experience in marketing and sales. So sometimes you have to ask some very tough questions. Is the function offering meeting the needs of my users? Does it make them feel safe or secure, or does it make them feel happy or excited? Can they afford it in the new normal? Can we afford to sell it at a discounted price? And of course, how many, which I touched upon earlier. So for those of you who are in the home care business, I have put this slide up for you to see, which is consumers have been very quick to align their spends around products or services. Don't get confused by the slide. I'll walk you through it. So if you see, there's a picture on the right, which is a Nielsen study. And if you do see under Asia, there is IND, which is India. And this is a ranking of claims. So number one claim, which is what do people look for when they want to buy home care products? Number one is keeps my family protected against germs and bacteria. Second, number two, as you can clearly see, is keeps my family safe from disease. So what do we say? That in the COVID situation in India, most people are looking for home care products which talk about how it protects their family against germs and diseases. And that's really the most important thing. So when you have a depressed spending environment, when you don't have so much disposable income, you'd like to spend bulk of your money on home care products, which will protect you and your family. So if you are in the home care business, now may be the time to look at your messaging and see, am I saying the right thing to my consumer? If you look down at the bottom, what do Indian consumers not really care about in a COVID situation? Locally made, sustainable packaging, sustainable ingredients. So it looks like when you have limited income, you would like to spend it on buying lots of stuff to keep your family safe, but you're not really ready to spend too much on things which are sustainably packed or sustainable ingredients or which are locally made. I'm not saying that this will continue forever. I'm just saying that during the COVID times, and at least for a few more months and things stabilize, people act in a particular way. So there is a shift in consumer sentiment from a time when quality and trust were more important than how effective are you in killing germs and bacteria. So the reason why I've spent some time on this is that for all of us, it's necessary to make sure, is my product affordable and is it relevant? Does it meet the needs of the consumer in the here and now? So what we need to do is ask ourselves these three questions. And I'm going to ask Ritika if she could do this session for us, because Ritika runs this totally beautiful company called Bare Essentials. And please, I'd like you to talk about it. So what does my customer feel about the category we operate in today? Are we important enough to spend on? Are we relevant, with a decline in income? What are the emotional and functional benefits my brand offers the consumer? Are we ready to meet them? Are they a priority to them post lockdown? And finally, how are you different from competition? Because when people don't have money and when there are several brands on the shelf, that's when you start evaluating. Should I, buy this brand? Should I not buy this brand? Or should I just not buy anything at all? So would it be okay, Ritika, for you to take a few minutes to come back and tell us your views on this?
Yeah,
I hope she's still
absolutely.
there.
It's about the
Lovely.
competition and can you please go back to your slide? Okay. Yeah. Should I go ahead now?
Yes, Ritika.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, functional and emotional benefits that are brands. So, one of the key things that we did when the lockdown was announced. So, actually, we launched an online course, online learning course, starting January this year. But we never really put in any marketing budget, or we didn't really like promote it a lot, just organically. But then when the lockdown was announced and everything, we kind of took that opportunity to kind of put in all our efforts and energy into promoting the online course, because we felt that that would be that could like save us a little in terms of revenues. So so that was something like really key. And what we did with that online course was connecting with the participants through a forum, so that they can learn from each other, and kind of it's a platform where they can really share a lot of things, what happens in their homes. So it became like a really strong community, and after a certain point, like participants, they themselves started responding to the queries of other participants, and it was really cute. And also another thing that what we did was series of bare thoughts, a series of webinars, like every week, every Sunday. It was all free of cost. It was nothing like something that customer had to pay, but it was just a kind of a thing for even for my employees to kind of stay engaged with the company, and also for like consumers to stay engaged with the brand. So it had like a dual benefit. So we did that for like 5 Sundays, and we got like pretty decent turnout. And for those webinars, we try to reach like industry experts more, so that more people, so they can also get more people to attend those webinars and all. So that was one another thing that we did to connect with consumers emotionally. Before COVID situation, sorry, I should have mentioned earlier, we used to do a lot of talks and workshops like personally. It's a really slow process. It takes years to build that, because you at one time you can't connect to more than like 10-15 consumers maybe. So it takes a long time, but it like we really feel good about ourselves when we do that, when we personally connect with consumers. So that we used to do pre lockdown situation, and then we are now trying to move that to online basis. So like the series of webinars was like a test run of the same. So now we are thinking of doing that through online like media.
One question, Ritika.
Yeah.
Since from what I understand, and I've gone through your website, you sell really premium products which are about sustainable living, right?
Yes.
So traditionally, you've sold through retail, you've sold through events. So now, how are you? I just wanted to ask. This is a very interesting way by which you are actually reaching out to people through seminars, through talks, all online. Is there a twist in the way you're doing it? Because today everybody is doing something online. So if you're successful, then how is it that you've managed to get so many people on board and engaged? Are there any tricks that you could share with us?
I mean, there's not specific any tricks that we applied like just like recently. Like I said, right, like from the beginning, that was like a inbuilt value in our company, and so we've been doing that for 3 years. So we've been connecting with consumers about like in small groups, in person, and all. So we've been doing that like gradually, and so I mean that kind of automatically gave us like good turnout into our webinars. So we do have, like you just mentioned in a couple of slides before, we do have a good social media presence. So that kind of helps to reach out more. And we are trying to do more like podcast and other medias as well. And you're right, like there are a lot of people already, but you can't just stop doing what you think is right in this scenario. And given that like right now, like our platforms are limited, to, you know, for us to explore, limited platforms, mostly just online. So yes, everybody is going to explore, and in on only on those medias. So it's just, I mean, it's a good opportunity for us to be creative, to, you know, stand out in that competition.
Correct. Okay, thank you. That's really nice because very few people are actually able to make the shift from face-to-face events to online because they are
Yeah.
new skill sets. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
it's really nice that you talk about it so confidently because this is a new skill set which you and your company have developed. And this will really be a essential skill set as we move on. Because really, once you get used to doing a video call, you think twice about traveling, for 2 hours to go and meet someone.
Absolutely. One of the
So
tricks that I remember, like I can share it right now, is like engage your all employees, because your all employees can speak. These days, every employee has a social media, so utilize the network of your employees. Ask them to share everything. So like our founder Seher, she started off herself, but now like most of us in the team, like we have started giving out the talks and workshop by ourselves, and it's like becoming a huge circle now. So I mean that's one of the tip that I can share.
that's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, or should I continue?
That's all from me.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ritika. So I'm just going to show and summarize, just as Malini's points of view help bring alive how she is pivoting to meet the needs for the post-COVID situation. Ritika has talked to us very, frankly about how, things have changed. So what she's really talked about is how is she addressing these questions. I'm just going to the previous one, which if you can see, Ritika's company has pivoted beautifully. That they have a fantastic website with a great value proposition, and I myself are very much tempted to buy everything there because it looks so beautiful. They are easy to discover, and she has a fabulous social media presence. And I think, as she said, as a company, they have adopted digital communication as a way of life, and that is a very, very good thing because leadership is what sets the tone of any organization. And Ritika and her team, by the leadership, has done it. So I think that's really what's helped bring a change. And we've already discussed relevance and how brands are becoming more relevant and not spending too much time on it, because Malini has already shared how they shifted from making a home, fabric menstrual pads to moving to masks, because those are more relevant in today's times. So what I'd like to do is, I don't think we have that much time, so I'm going to skip this case study because we've already discussed it. I'm going into the next section, which is on competitive advantage. Here, I'd like Sindhuja to talk to us if she's still there, because Sindhuja sells stuff which is for kids platform. She could introduce herself and share more information. But what we're clearly seeing is that all of us are fighting for a share of the pie. And how do we compare vis-a-vis competition? Is our competition, better than us, worse than us? Are we unique? Are we differentiated? Because when people don't have too much money, then they don't want to spend money. So you have to stand out from the crowd. So this is an example of an organic food brand. This is an NGO which we work with. They sell a lot of organic stuff from pickles, poppers, honeys, and stuff like that. People buy their products via website. They have a store in Coimbatore and a few events, but they're just not able to grow beyond a point in time. They're just not able to grow through Amazon because of the margins that Amazon's charging. Premium supermarkets also, they're not standing out. And with lockdown, they find that people are not ready to spend that kind of money on organic produce. So this is a classic case of a brand, which is a really good brand, but today there are many organic brands which are there on the shelf. So the biggest problem that my client is facing is that, sure, they're organic, sure, they're tasty, sure, they are made by self-help groups, but they are not the only brand on the shelf anymore. And this becomes very important when people don't have so much disposable income. And then they're going to look at your brand very closely. Like, why should I choose your brand over the other? So in a post-COVID situation, it'll be really critical for everybody to be 100% sure what is their competitive advantage. Almost none of us are in a monopoly situation. All of us have to fight for a share of the wallet. So how do we compare in a competitive scenario our product features, affordability, brand value? How does that work out? And how can you give a customer a reason to choose your brand over the competition? I have an example here. It's a B2C brand called Herbal Strategy, one of our clients. They sell very, very premium household products. So one of the products is, which we use all the time, which is a mosquito repellent. Each bottle costs $180 as compared to a Goodnight mat, which is like $60 or $80. So, but there's still a very big player. That's because it's 100% natural, it's extremely effective. And once you use Strategy herbal sprays, the chances are that there will be no mosquitoes, because it kills mosquitoes. They don't enter, unlike the others, which kills them off with poisonous fumes. This has got a lot of citronella and lemongrass, so the mosquitoes don't even enter your house. So there are a lot of reasons why this brand is able to hold its own in a category dominated by players like Goodnight, but is able to hold its own, charge a premium, and actually bring about consumer habit change, that people have actually started using mosquito spray as opposed to a plug-and-play repellent. Maybe if we have some time, Sindhuja, would you like to talk about why customers should choose you in a period like this? Would Sindhuja be open to share her views?
Okay, hi. Thank you for the opportunity. So Play-Doh Kids is a platform where we are trying to connect the hyperlocal businesses with the parents. So initially we were about to launch our platform in the end of this June month, but due to this COVID thing, we actually sensed there was an emerging trend with the online educational resources. So thank God we were not yet launched. So we thought, why to go into the hyperlocal business? Because however, even after post COVID-19, as a parent, me myself, I'd be worried to send my kid to any other kids activity class or whatever, even to the school. So I spoke with other parents too, and we noticed that there would be a thing where people will be more comfortable to keep their kids at home and engage them. But still the parents were worried about the educational disruption due to this. So there was a trend where people are leaning more towards the online educational resources. So we revamped our whole website, and now we are trying to add the listings that, we are trying to create a platform where the educational resources, the listing owners who provides services related to the educational resource, to add their business to our platform, so that the parents can come in and they can just make use of it. They can read the reviews of the education platform and their price, charges, what are the skills they are giving, everything. Actually, 1 week before, this was our whole business model and we were about to launch. But after speaking with Rini, I got another idea of, she said that instead of just giving the platform, have you thought what is the what might be some solution that you are giving for the small existing business owners? So as I said, kids activity providers are not big corporate clients. They are almost parents or 2 or 3 team members who are giving classes or other activities. So we thought, there are not everyone are more technically sound. So few people might need some help in going online. So at that time, after speaking with Rini, we understood if we can bring some online module into our platform, then the listing owners might feel this platform more useful than compared to other platforms. So it would be a great selling point for us to onboard customers. So actually now we are speaking with our developers and we are in the process of adding an online module into our platform, so that listing owners who are not even technically sound, they can just come into the platform, they can add their business. And if they want to schedule an online live or any virtual class or even a future event, they can create a form and they can just publish their class with our platform. And once the parents are being a member of our platform, they can view all the events and upcoming online classes and they can just enroll for it. So this is how our whole business model has been shifted, pivoted after speaking with Rini. Thanks to Rini, actually.
Not at all. Thank
So
you.
now, online module integration, I'm confident that yeah, our platform would stand better compared to the other platforms. It would be a good competitive advantage, I guess.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Sindhija. That's very nice of you to say nice things about us also. But the truth is, I think the reason why I was so excited after speaking to Sindhija is that she's selling a platform in which children's activities are going to be promoted. And it would be like, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but something like a Zomato for kids activities. But by adding some benefits, some unique offering which she's talking of today, by which people like a Sanskrit teacher can just may not know how to conduct Zoom classes or webinars, and actually just gets on to Play-Doh Kids and can immediately connect to customers and then start a session from the next day. That kind of ease of access is great. So in a way, if she is able to do both, which is remain true to her brand offering before COVID, but adapt to the post-COVID requirements, her business will really take off. So thank you for sharing your unique benefits that you're offering. I'd like to go into the last part of our presentation today, which is on leveraging existing customers. Now, many of us have really good brands and services, but unfortunately, though we have very strong network with customers, we don't necessarily have very good CRM business opportunities. So this is a example for a personal care brand where we've been selling to customers over 5 years, easily in lakhs. It's an organic brand. Customers are very loyal, but the lady who I spoke to, she does not have a customer retention or a management program, because somehow she felt that that is something that very large companies have money for. But after lockdown, a lot of the business has declined, and therefore fulfillment is a problem. So she has a lot of problems, but what for me I felt was she's been selling to over 5 lakh customers. So she has like a mini city of people who have been buying her brands. So one of the number one things that they could do is, how do you kickstart a loyalty program, getting more people to buy your brand? So this is something which I would like to leave all of you with, which is women entrepreneurs have some amazing businesses, great products, great quality, and very high levels of customer satisfaction. But we often hesitate to ask customers for simple things like repeat business or referral business or even new business. And we don't really try to get them to buy more of our stuff, because we don't want to look like as though we are pushy. But sadly, most of our loyal customers want us to survive the downturn. They want us to continue serving us and being there for us. So what I would request all of you to do is, no matter how big or small your business is, the first step is engage your customers and give them an opportunity to help you survive this crisis. And I want to share a simple example with you. It's a case study of a brand called Skincraft. I'm not sure whether many of you have seen or heard of Skincraft. It's a smallish company based in Hyderabad which sells precision cosmetic care. So in this case study, as you can see, this is their website, and I have many existing customers of theirs. They're very transparent. They say refer and get 1,500 rupees worth of skincare. How do they go about it? Each time you refer a friend, you get 1,600 rupees worth of skincare products. Now, these products are great products. They are very effective, dermatologically tried, test, blah, blah. But I mean, 1,500 bucks worth of products is pretty good. So that is one. And the second one is, if you are an existing customer, when they come in and they give you, when they deliver it, they include these simple flyers, which I've included, which actually tells you, 3 steps to get a free sunscreen, again, post on social. So as you can see, not only do they have great referral programs, they have great rewards program, and they keep trying to get you to buy a year's worth of goods. Prices come down by almost 300, 400 bucks if you move to a annual buying system. So you actually get discounts for being loyal to the customer. So the way I've seen it is, the reason why I'm sharing Skincraft's example is that if you Google Skincraft review, you will find hundreds of reviews by women and dermatologists. Until I actually became a Skincraft customer, I didn't know that they were getting a bottle of sunscreen to review the brand. I just thought they were like They love the brand, and I'm sure they do. But this is a very smart way to get people who are happy about your brand to talk about your brand. The gift or the offering that you give them for making a referral recommendation should be also of value to them, because today people don't like to review just about any product. But if you do like a product or service, the chances are, if the brand owner requests you to review it, share an honest review, and reward you for it, the chances are consumers would take it. And since all of you actually run really cool brands, I would really request all of you, whether it's a brand like Stone Soap or whichever brand, I think you should consider, how can I build a customer referral program? With that, I'll move into the last section of, we have, I think, about 10 minutes to go. So I'll just move to the last section. Do we have any questions at this stage? I'm quickly moving back to my screen. Do we have any questions at this stage, or should I just continue? I think I'll just continue. Okay. So I'm going into the last section, which is, how do I plan to succeed? In my opinion, strategy fails without any execution plan. So what can you do to succeed? I'm just summarizing an action plan. So today we've spoken of how do you accept the situation? Second, how do you analyze the brand? How do you create brand awareness? How are you creating relevance? How do you have competitive advantage? And how do you engage your customers? So the last part which I'm talking to you about, it's a quick summary on action planning to succeed. I'd like you to look at, there are only 3 things which I have left behind here. And if you just take a look at it, clearly it's about reviewing your value proposition. The first step here is, how do you review your value proposition and stay relevant in a post-COVID situation? By relevance, I would mean review to make sure that you're relevant and the pricing is affordable. That's the first step that all of us needs to do to make sure that we are ready for the new normal. The second one is communicate your brand offering. Review your messaging to make sure it's crisp and clear. Don't have too much conversation, because consumers don't have a long attention span. Focus on building a digital presence that brings alive your value proposition in a very distinctive manner. And last but not the least, engage with your existing customers. CRM is very boring. It's always nice to have events where you meet new customers. But CRM pays off in the long run. And CRM, I mean customer relationship management. One of the simple thing to do is analyze your data. Look at people who contribute to 80% of your sale. Use the 80-20 rule to identify clusters of engagement. Profile your core customers and engage with them. This is a very simple way by which you can identify customers who are important to you. And once you know customers who are important to you, please arrive at a very transparent reward and recognition program to encourage people to make referrals and repeats. This is nothing wrong. People anyway were giving word of mouth recommendations about your brands when they were meeting people. If they're not able to meet people, they can definitely do it on social. And with that, I would like to summarize. This is the last slide. In my opinion, profitable growth for any brand depends on how well you understand your customer, manage your employees, and deploy your funds. So the reason why I would like to close this is to say that number one thing for all of us to remember is, in a post-COVID situation, it doesn't matter, who or what we think is responsible for the situation. That's not important at all. As business owners, it is our responsibility to first accept the situation based on facts. Second, analyze the situation from a brand perspective, from how our consumers look at the world around them. And lastly, to chart out an action plan. Like, how can we make it better for us once the lockdown situation completely lifts and the economy comes back? So with that, I kind of bring myself to the end of this session, and we have some time for questions. So I wanted to check, does anyone have any questions?
Thanks, Renee. Anyone, any questions?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Renee, for conducting this very focused workshop for us today. And I'm sure all the participants have benefited. Participants, we would please, for a follow-up with Renee, or if you want to know anything more, with Renee's permission, please get in touch with us and we'll connect them to you, Renee. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And also, I would like to tell you that we, along with Rini, we are also planning another workshop of a B2B scenario businesses. And if any one of you are interested on that aspect too, please do write to me and let us know about your interest. On that note, I would also like to invite you for our next webinar, which would be on MSME, addressing the MSME announcements during the COVID-19, a recap on all the regulatory announcements and lessons from COVID-19 crisis. Time to get a due diligence, what happens if you are not meeting those criteria and everything, by CA Nidhi Tatia, who's our member too. And this would be a very useful webinar for all of you. So I'd like to request all of you to join us. And yeah, thank you. Please do subscribe to all our social media channels and also to our YouTube channels. A recording of this entire webinar would be available, and you would be able to access it shortly. We would put it up on the member group once it's ready. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again.